What's all up out there in internet land? Today I want to make a video talking about the importance of learning your instrument. Now, this video can pertain to anybody who's, a singer, who's a guitar player, who's a bass guitar player, if you're a piano player or you're a drummer or you're a ukulele player or a sax player, doesn't matter. I always tell students, I always say, look, you always want to learn your instrument as best you can. Because that's what my music teachers told me. They want to say, learn the instrument as best you can. I remember I had a student about 2 years ago. He was a guitar student, and he's like, man, how do I play like Jimi Hendrix? He had a couple lessons, and he was doing pretty good. He had learned his chords, and he had learned some basic scales, and he said, man, how do I play like Jimi Hendrix? And I said, man, well, if you want to play like Jimi Hendrix, I said, you gotta, if you want to play the riffs, I said, you gotta listen to the albums. I said, listen to Are You Experienced? Listen to Electric Ladyland. I said, you know, learn the riffs. I said, you know, he said, well, how do I shred like Hendrix? I said, well, look, Hendrix put a lifetime of study into that instrument. I remember reading a story about Jimi Hendrix where he would be, cooking at the oven and he'd have a guitar around him and he'd have an idea and he'd play the idea, or he always carried a guitar around with him all the time. And I remember, I think it was his bass player friend Billy Cox said, man, Jimi Hendrix put a lifetime of effort of the guitar into about his 27 years of life on this earth. And I always tell people that, if you want to learn a song, if you want to play like Eddie Van Halen, if you want to play Eruption, if you want to play, Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix, go out and learn it. A guy I was in a band with, shout out to Tom Ridgway. He's one of the few guitar players that I ever saw who could play Eruption. And how did he learn Eruption? He basically, he watched videos, he slowed it down, and he took it piece by piece by piece. And eventually he got it. He did the same thing when we were in a band together. We still are. And he was learning the solo for Hotel California. And he took it slow, he took it, piece by piece, and eventually he got it and he figured it out. So if you want to learn a song, if you want to learn the riffs as a guitar player, or if you want to learn, YYZ by Neil Peart, or you want to learn how, Moby Dick by Led Zeppelin if you're a drummer, put the album on and slow it down, do what you got to do and figure it out and until you get it down. So all that learning that you do, in your practice space eventually will help you out down the road if you're ever in a band because you're learning songs. So, also too, I remember being in a band and people people would say, "Man, you guys sound great." And I'd say, "Yeah, we sound great because we put the effort in." I was in a band called the Capers. Shout out to the Capers and Bernadette Matthews and Amy Hufana and Brian O'Neill and Seth Johnson. I was in a band, I was the Capers. We would take songs and, the singers, Bernadette and Ron, would go over harmonies or we would go over the structure of the tune. And, they'd say, this song needs this kind of groove, or your kick drum pattern needs to be this type of, this rhythm, or it's this kind of Latin rhythm. And we would rehearse like sometimes 2 or 3 times a week, really breaking a song down and kind of putting it all back together, and we reap the rewards of it. So we rehearsed as a band. So you got to put the effort in as a musician. Anybody that you see that's great at a musical instrument, or acting too for that matter, they put a lot of time in, trying to get the right shot, or if you're a musician, learning your scales, or, if you're a drummer, learning your rudiments. So you got to put the effort in. And we live in a day and age where a lot of people don't want to hear that. People, maybe learn a couple chords on the guitar and they want to play like Stevie Ray Vaughan, but it doesn't happen that way. You got to put the time in, you got to put the work in, and, then you can reap the rewards. But anybody that'll tell you that's proficient at an instrument can tell you that it's a lifetime's worth of study. So it's just something to think about, as you progress as a musician. So it's basically about learning your craft. So thanks for your time. Please like and subscribe the video. God bless, and I'll see you soon. Peace.